Live with it. Right, Chairman, you're live.
Okay. Okay. Welcome everybody to our meeting of the Harbour Committee. Do we have any declarations of interest?
No interest whatsoever.
I didn't ask that. Yes, Julie.
Just as our local member for half of Newport Harbour.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you so much for that. Move on. Sorry. The minutes of the last meeting. Are there any comments from members?
No.
Move, Chair.
Just Julie.
No, moving. Move them.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll second it.
Yeah, good. All in agreement? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Public question time. We have 15 minutes to answer questions from the public. Are there any?
We haven't been notified of any, so.
Okay. Right, we'll move on to item 4 then, which is finance reports on pages 9 and 14. Okay. Who's going to present that?
I can talk through them generally, Ian, and then take questions.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah.
I mean, I can probably summarise these quite quickly, and then if anybody wants to ask any detailed questions, that they can do. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's much of the same pattern as we presented at the last meeting, but it's obviously a standard item on the agenda. I think the general pattern across certainly Ryde and Newport Harbour is the biggest impact we've had, which would be no surprise to anybody, is the impact of COVID, obviously, and the impact on income. So I think on both the two main income generating harbours, of Ryde and Newport, we can see a substantial loss of berthing income, which is only to be expected. Obviously, the harbour's closed during the lockdown period. We've had lower income from regular moorings. We've also had lower visitor income as well. The other 2 points, and so I can cover these relatively quickly, and then we can open up to questions. The other 2 things that stood out for me were on the expenditure lines. One is around Newport Harbour, and there is quite an overspend or forecasted overspend, supplies and services, and much of that is related to legal fees, which we've incurred trying to progress the harbour revision order, which is now obviously 2 years in its making. So we're waiting for a decision from the MMO, which I'll update on in a minute. And the other overspend I think that tends to stand out is on Ventnor Harbour, and that's because of the current seaweed removal contract being forecasted to be more expensive than we've had previously, and that's obviously an ongoing piece of work that we're trying to remedy and discuss with others. But I don't think Mark Gordine is on the call today. I think he's maybe on holidays, our budgetary accountant. But I just wondered if I'm quite open to take any questions from anybody, and we'll see if we can answer them.
Right, Councillor Tyndall and Councillor Perks. Got you later.
Okay. I am on right. Alex, do I take it the forecast was done pre-COVID for the year?
No, the end of year forecast is ongoing and done at the end of the accountants revise it at the end of each month, so that it's as accurate as it can be at that point in time.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a forecast that was done before pre-COVID, because otherwise I'll be asking, how accurate is this forecast that you're doing? Well, I'll ask that question anyway. How accurate do you think it is with the outcomes?
Difficult to say because we can't predict what's going to happen in the remainder of the financial year, but I would like to think that it is as accurate as we can probably get, as good as guesstimate as we can get with the information that we've got to date, because obviously it takes into account those months when we've obviously gone through the COVID period and the harbour's been closed, etc., and then averages that out across the remainder of the year. But I mean, to some extent, at this particular time of year, obviously heading into the winter, we've had the busiest parts of the season anyway. So the loss of income would mainly be felt obviously in the summer season, which we've already had and already lost the income from. So probably fairly accurate.
Okay, and then the end of the year is end of April, is it? And next year.
End of March, so 31st of March 2021.
So potentially the ride one could change slightly if we give it them the harbour and everything.
Possibly. I think it's unlikely we're going to get to give even if we can get it in this financial year. It's going to be very tight, I think. So I think that's probably likely to be a similar figure to the forecasted figure.
Okay, so grim and getting grimmer. Fine, okay, that's fine.
Okay, Councillor Perks, Graham.
Yep, good, thank you. I'm a bit concerned. I've asked 3 times at least to be kept up to scratch on the ongoing situation at Ventnor Haven, and I can say in the last 2 years I've not received one email or letter or any notification of anything. And during that time, there's work's been carried out, maintenance contracts have been extended. There's things going on with the fishermen, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I'd just like somebody, presumably the harbour master or Alex, to get me a regular, monthly, if it need be, update of exactly what's going on. Because sometimes I just think, well, I can see what's going on here. They're just going to shelve it and shelve it and shelve it, so it keeps losing money. We're going to sell it for £1. And we've seen it all happen before, and it's totally wrong, because if it was managed properly, I'm sure, and so lots of local fishermen, etc., that it could make money. So I can ask again, can I be kept up to date as the local councillor so that I can let the local people know exactly what's going on with their haven? It was built for locals in Ventnor, for the fishermen, etc., built for them. So please give me an update.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Graham. Julie, could you make sure that goes in the minutes? If you're doing it. Marie, sorry, yeah.
Is that okay, Ian?
Okay.
I
Right.
can.
Go on, shoot.
I've just got
Sorry, Julie. I'm quite happy to take that outside the meeting and arrange something with Councillor Perks, with the relevant people.
Okay, good. Julie, you wanted to say?
Yeah, it's just a quick question regarding the parking income in Newport Harbour. I understand there's sometimes a lag showing when the income actually comes back to the harbour from the Isle of Wight Council to go into the harbour account. But for the year to date is 274, and the forecast outturn is 274. So does that just reflect the amount of money we've had in at the minute, and there'll be more to come, Alex?
Yeah, there normally is an adjustment. It's the reason it doesn't go in straight away is because of the fact that a lot of people purchase permits, and then we've got to make an allocation of how much of that permit income goes to the harbour. So there's normally towards the end of the year an adjustment made there. So you're quite correct, Julie. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Has anyone got any more on the finance reports? Okay, in that case, we move on to the report of the Senior Harbour Master. Lawrence? Hello? Do we have the Senior Master?
It's from Jonathan.
All right, okay.
Jonathan, just there.
Jonathan, yes, certainly.
Hi,
okay.
Afternoon all. The Get Well plan is much as the same as last year. Last meeting. We're waiting for the MMO's decision on the general on the HRO. The emergency preparedness, we've moved some of that on. We've now got a contract in place, and we're in the process of organising our next exercise. Other than that, it's sort of updating the navigational risk assessments from last year, just sort of annually to update them. And other than that, it's sort of we've gone through and we're working through what we have, the last remaining couple that we have.
Okay. Have you covered both the items, Jonathan? The Get Well plan and your report?
No, I've only done the Get Well plan.
Okay, right. Any questions on the Get Well plan? No, right, Jonathan. Let's move on to your next one.
Okay. The missing number that we had for November for the folly is 60. So everyone's sort of up to date with that.
Sorry, Jonathan, 60 what? What was?
Sorry, visitors numbers,
right.
which
Okay.
I didn't have when I issued this. So my apologies for that. The turn down in visitors numbers is sort of standard for the season. I mean, they are reduced because of the interesting times we live in, but it's a sort of standard drop off. The main things that sort of happened through the month, the staffing is for September they were doing 2 hours either side of tide. For November and October we've increased it, so they're doing 3 hours either side. So then they're sort of on site. Major event was David did his designated person audit of our Port Marine Safety Code, but he will go through that later. We were also inspected by Trinity House and for the navigation lights and markers. And our sort of biggest difficulty we had in the last 3 months was that we had a boat at the Folly that kept on sinking, but we've luckily managed to refloat it and remove it from site where it's now departed, which is ideal. And then for White Gates, the public landing, we're working with COWS, and COWS have now started issuing notices to remove all of the problem boats we had there, and they should be being cleared shortly. Are there any questions?
Ryan, you had one. John.
No, I've got more than one. Under staff, if you let me go through them. The member of staff injured with their wrist when shutting the skip. Okay, how did he do that? Was it his fault, or was it a fault with the equipment or something else? Because it doesn't actually state why it happened. And if he's injured his wrist, obviously it's a potential hazard that will happen again. What have you done to stop it happening again? Or was he just bloody stupid?
I think he was just unfortunate.
That's the same expression I used. Okay. Didn't take enough care.
At the harbour, we've got a closed skip, and they've got a sheet plate to stop fly tipping. We've been locking it when the staff haven't been on site, and there's a handle that you flip it up and over. I think he just got his hand caught in the handle. So since then, we've just been unlocking it. So then it's left down, but it is the same skip that they've had for numerous years.
Okay.
And it hasn't been it is the first time we've had an issue with it.
Okay, under works, you got the 4 cases of fly tipping, which I'm not too sure. And you said you cleared it all. Was there any identification from the fly tipping? Who owned it? Can we go back and do something about it?
Sadly not. We had a look through. It was mainly garden waste, and it's one of the reasons we knew it was fly tips from outside the harbour, because not too many of the boats have got a hedge. So
only the ones that have been there a long time. Okay, right. On the next one I got is under events. You got with the schools back. There have been problems with students on the pontoons and quay. I take it that means they just wander around then. When you say the problems with the students?
Yeah, sometimes it's just that they walk along them. When the tide is at the right height, they find it rather adventurous to jump from the quay onto the pontoons. They're not doing anything particular. It's just that they are around the site, and during lockdown we didn't have the problem because they weren't about.
Okay. Next one was under land and property, graffiti and everything. It said requested advice from property services on the 9th of the 11th. You haven't got an answer, I take it on that.
Since then, someone else has sprayed over it and got rid of a lot of the information that was trying to be advertised. But no, I have for our removal of it, we're still going through finding out what we will do.
The next one goes on to the next item about a tent, and you said reported to Parks and Countryside. You've heard nothing back from them, I take it, about that?
No, I've been in contact with them and they are now, there's no evidence of them now.
Okay, I'll ignore that one, not that. No, and then just a general thing, when you got inspection results, lots of times say periodic inspections, periodic visual inspections, but I think what would be handy to know is who actually did those inspections. Was it a staff inspection or was it an outside body? It doesn't actually sort of identify who was doing the inspection.
The inspections are carried out by the harbour staff that's on duty, so they walk the site sort of when they're in, so then that's the dates, and then anything that is any actions that are taken are recorded, and that's all on our release sheets.
One of them says inspection of life belts, fire extinguishers, so they can, you know, they can inspect them, but normally most people have an outside body coming in and checking your fire extinguishers to make sure they're up to date and adequate, likewise as safety ladders. But if they're doing it themselves, have they got the necessary qualifications to actually do that safety check?
They are inspected annually by White Fire. It is a inspection to just double check they haven't been set off, run off with, so they're still actually on site, and the boxes haven't been interfered with.
No, okay. It's just that I just think it might be useful just to staff inspections or not, so we know who's actually done the inspection. Because you said some of these are down to Trinity House and that other body as well, that Marco, whatever it is, Marina. And I just think it'd be ideal if we could actually do it. And the other one is this, and I'm going to show a little bit of my ignorance. Under slipways inspection, it says fully slipway marker pole striated on the so-and-so. What the hell does that mean?
Someone, when they were bringing their boat in, managed to bend it quite spectacularly. So then it was just recovering it and straightening it up, because at one point it was leant over.
So that's just a miss. That's just a misspelling of straightening, is it?
Probably. Sorry, let me just quickly find it. Where are we? Slipways.
Second one from the bottom.
Yeah, sorry, it's mistyping by me. Yeah. My apologies.
Well, I'm not completely ignorant then. That's okay.
No, it's just proving that I am with how to spell straightening. Yeah.
Okay. And then the last one on White Gates Pier, it said Cowes Harbour Commission notices are still being placed on there. Can you, again, slightly, why are these notices placed there? What's it for? You know, to new signs confirming Cowes Harbour Commission. Can you just explain that to me? What's actually been done there?
Certainly. Whitegate Pier is within Cowes' jurisdiction. The council hold a lease area to the south of it, but at the end of the pier there's a public landing, and in the past there's been a confusion of the clearing of it. Cowes have now agreed and are actively clearing the public landing using their general directions, as it's within their jurisdiction, and it's outside of our lease area and our jurisdiction. The signs have been put up to explain each Cowes' and the council's responsibilities for that pier, so to try and stop the confusion.
Good luck. Okay, that's me finished, Ian.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else? Go on, Julie.
I had something in the chat box. So if you saw it, yeah.
I haven't seen anything.
Nothing in the chat box.
I've seen it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Brian, have a look in the chat box.
That's okay, Ian. I read that. I was
Okay.
just making a general comment.
Okay.
Well, no, it wasn't a general comment because you said was the member of staff being BLOODY stupid? I don't think that's an appropriate comment to make in this forum or of a member of our staff. So I just wanted to put that out, please. That's why I'd like you to retract it. But if you don't want to, that's fine.
No. I understand what you're saying. And perhaps it was fruitful, but perhaps not the right thing to say. I apologise.
Thank you. Thank you. So I had a question. Thank you, Brian, for going through some of the details in the report. I had some of those to pick up as well. Jonathan, has the fence been fixed now on the Premier Inn? Have they now done that?
Not quite. Last time I had a look yesterday, it was still in the process of being prepared to be fixed. I have popped in and reminded them that it's still requiring work.
Price, do you want to send an email as well on that one? I mean, I can have as local member, maybe it might help her to along a bit more. I don't know.
I believe that we're on the list of their maintenance. It's more than a 5-minute job, and I believe they might need to do some quite heavy work. I mean, the fence panel is nearly 3 meters long and 2 meters high, so it's not something that one of the usual hotel staff would be able to have a look, I think.
It's obviously it's a health and safety issue though for the harbour.
No, where they've moved it to, it's on their quay. It's a lot easier. So they've moved it round in front of their area. There isn't a standard walkway from there, so
okay.
it's not a fixed wall because you can walk round the end of it, the fence.
Okay.
So
that's helpful, thank you. And it's just a question regarding, obviously we have the recent high tides, haven't we? And I was just wondering, did any of the water go over onto the road in front of the bargeman's rest? That sometimes does get flooded, and I was just wondering about the situation there. I think that's still part. Is that part of the highways network, isn't it, Ian? It's not part of the harbour, is it? I think that's part of.
That's correct. I believe it is part of the highway. On the big spring tides, we have had a slight bit of water going over it, but when the tide drops, then it drains away.
Yeah, it's just can be a bit of an issue, can't it, for vehicles along there? Yeah, it's just an ongoing thing. I think maybe needs addressing at some point. Thank you. That's all from me. Thank you, Chair.
Steve.
Thank you, Chairman. Jonathan, under dangerous occurrences near misses, you've got the mooring lines let go after midnight, believed by youths, and that's really all it says. But it says owner on board. My curiosity wonders what happened next. What was the outcome?
It was reported he was a visitor, and the visitors, he was on board his boat. He heard one of his lines go. He went up there, and according to him, the gentleman that was doing it was terribly polite to him, and he informed him to leave him alone, and we haven't had any other problems with it. I don't know what their intention was to untie it. When the owner reported it, he was sort of more reporting it as information. He didn't seem to be too disturbed by it.
A good outcome, because
yeah,
if said person had been asleep, for instance, and that line was released, it could have been quite nasty.
Yeah. I mean, we do try and encourage visitors and permanents to make the lines difficult to untie by tying them to the pontoon and making
Absolutely.
them off on the boats. I think it was just someone not thinking clearly, but luckily the owner was on board and was confident enough, and the individual was polite enough to realise his wrongdoings.
Right. Okay. So not as bad as it could have been, but yeah, nice secure knots. I think that's the the answer to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Does anybody have anything else? Graham?
Yeah, thank you. Jonathan, I've had a word with Alex to try for a third or fourth time to get a reasonably, say, a monthly update on the ongoings at Ventnor Haven. But over the last 2 years, I've had virtually nothing. So I'd like to ask you the same question. Can you please keep me in the loop of anything that's going on down there? I've made a little list. That anything appertaining to the berthing availability, how many times the pump boat is used, the boat details or slipway availability, that's quite often roped off, etc., etc. And all these things should be available and told to me, so that I could tell the general public, so that we can find out exactly what's going on. And I would like to know, get something in writing to me, exactly why the costs have gone up again this year and how much. Thanks very much.
Okay. Graham,
Yeah.
I know Alex said that he would help you with that issue. Do you want to ping in that list of issues that you just...
Yeah, I'll do that gladly.
Sure,
Yeah.
Alex. Collate that for you.
Yeah, okay, then I'll try that. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Go on.
No.
No. Okay, let's move on then. The next item is sorry, Jonathan. Thank you for that. The next item is the Harbour revision order, which I think Alex is going to do. We lost him.
Sorry, I was on mute like most of us. I'll just put my camera on as well for you.
Okay.
Slight movement since I think I spoke to you last time, and this has been the big frustration for all of us. The Harbour revision order, the length of time it's taken the MMO to make a decision on this. We have had some correspondence in the last week. There is an indication at this stage, a lot of the legal documents are with DFT, and the indication is that they will be making a decision probably in the early part of next year. So we've kept the pressure on, but it is dragging, and I think a lot of their work is dragging across the country. But I think we are, and David might even be able to confirm this, I think from what I've heard, it's probably one of the longest ever Harbour revision orders, the length it's taken the MMO to make a decision than ever experienced before. Obviously, we've had certain circumstances that have made a difference to that, but I think it is getting ridiculous, to be perfectly honest. But they have assured us in the new year we will get a decision on that, and it's the big piece of work that's left for us, and certainly something that David would have picked up in his audit, and something that's impacting on our ability to be able to be Port Marine Safety Code compliant, etc. So we wait with bated breath, and let's hope that the new year brings us that decision earlier rather than later. So thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Alex. Does anyone have any questions for Alex? No. Okay. Let's move on to items 7 and 8. Where are we? Mr. Foster, firstly, let me apologise for not introducing you at the very beginning. I do apologise. Okay.
I've met many of you before.
Okay. Anyway, Mr. Foster, I believe the next items are yours.
Yeah, I think the first one is, and I don't know who wants to present the second one. You should have received my report as well as the papers. What I thought I'd do is go through the executive summary with you, and then if you want to go there, we can talk those through, and then afterwards, if there's anything within the body of the report someone's read, we can go to that and discuss those as well. So are you happy with that sort of approach?
Certainly.
Right. I think the first thing to say is all I looked at is I looked at Newport Harbour, not Ryde and Ventnor, and we might come back to that. But I'm only your DP for Newport. The Ryde and Ventnor issue rumbles on about whether you're going to be taken over by local authorities, etc., etc., which is none of my business. However, at present, they certainly don't comply with the code because there is no DP, etc., etc., which you're aware of, and the letter we've got drafted addresses that. Going down to the main things is I'll come back to a little bit about the Harbour Revision Order. The two sort of big ticket items left over, apart from the things depending upon the Harbour Revision Order. One are the staffing issues and how you're going to staff up in the future. And I can see how it's interlinked with how you're going to look at Ryde and Ventnor, and the MCA when they did their health check with you. It's one of the points that they also brought up, as well as me, about not having staff there when the boats were there, not having boats there when the staff were there. In other words, and it's sort of being addressed at present, but in the future, getting that right. And I know that you have done a staffing study, and there is a cunning plan in place, but and I'm sure that it's going to be sorted out by the spring of next year when the yachts and things start coming back. But I think that's one to keep an eye on, because it's not just me, but it was noticed also by the Marine and Coast Guard Agency. The other one was the exercising of your emergency plans, and that I think has now been completed. When I wrote this, it was going to be done mid-November, but I haven't seen a report whether they've been done. Jonathan or Sean might be able to tell us whether that exercise was carried out as planned in November.
At present, it's been moved, and we are planning to get it done sort of beginning of next year. So. Right.
So you're falling quite back. When you have an oil spill contingency plan, part of that plan is a sort of undertaking to carry out training and exercises, and they should be seen to being done. Also, you've got a new emergency plan, and that again ought to be exercised. So those are two things. Those are things that are still sitting there that need to be addressed. I think the first thing is, and when I came over to see you when COVID wasn't quite as bad as it is now, I had did a good trip round the harbour, a good nose about and trip around the harbour. And the difference between when I first was involved with the harbour to now is marked. And it has to be said that your campaign for getting rid of derelict vessels and things has been incredibly successful, and you've shown more nerve than many harbour authorities have about pushing through with this. So all I can say is that people should be congratulated on that, because it's a horrid job, and you meet grumpy people, and it's no fun. I think, again, you'll see in the body of the report, but not here in the executive summary, because it's not the basic business of the DP. But you have a very nice, clean harbour now, and it's looking good. The Harbour Master's office and things is a throwback to the 1950s, and I don't know when any of you were last in there. But if you walk around that and say, is that the sort of face you want to put towards the general public? I think it really does need need to be looked at. But that's a personal view. It's nothing to do with my what I call formal Portsmouth Marine Safety Code audit. The Harbour Revision Order, we've just heard Alex talking about it again. I mean, you can see when I wrote this report for you, it was Q4 of 20, and it's now jumped across to Q1 of 21. You are having a truly rotten time with the MMO. I deal with them, with many ports authorities, and you've had your troubles with difficult objections to deal with and all that sort of thing, which has lengthened it. But the MMO have been, I don't know why they've singled you out, but I don't think they've singled you out, but by coincidence, yours has been a particularly difficult one to go through, and it has held up quite a number of other things that the things like getting your general directions out, sorting out things like speed limits, giving the harbour master and all of you as a port authority or as a committee more teeth to look after the harbour. So hopefully once that's gone, we can start addressing things like general directions. And I've already spoken to the harbour master and Sean about how we could go ahead with that once that's done. The next one is, I shouldn't do this because it sounds like snivelling as I'm actually doing it to your faces or to you. Is you as a harbour committee or a subcommittee as the duty holder, you are keeping now we've got it formed, we've settled in and got the harbour committee going, which you remember when I first joined, it didn't even exist, is now fully engaged. And I think now you're not saying on top of it, it sounds rude, but it's now you've got a nice management chain which ticks all the boxes for the Port Marine Safety Code, and I rather hope it ticks all the boxes for managing it as well. So I think that's something we should all be very pleased that that's working so well for. The harbour master there, I've mentioned it was up at the top, but I think that one needs to be kept a close review on, because if anything where you're lying a little from the last report from the MCA and now, that probably is the one item which we've sort of got covered and you are compliant, but it's a little bit on the thread. But I think that's something, but again, I think Mr. Lawrence can talk about that. The harbour user groups, as with virtually every port I'm dealing with, have things like this, stakeholder groups, their port user groups, those sort of things. People have been trying to get them kick them going with COVID going, but many of them had to be postponed, or one lot have been missed and the others. And again, the next meeting was planned for the 18th of November, but again, I haven't seen the minutes for that, so I don't know whether that is carried out. But Sean might be able to tell us whether that's been done.
Okay, anyone? Sean?
Yeah,
Sorry?
Ian, Ian, I can come in just in relation to a couple of points, if you like.
Okay.
In terms of the staffing restructure that David mentioned, we do have a plan in place to implement a new staff structure on a permanent basis, which will address the issue of having the harbour staffed around the tides. As David alluded to, we have actually managed that in the interim as a consequence of COVID, actually.
Yes.
In altering our staffing, but we are working on a report, and I hope to have that signed off early in the new year, which will see a small restructure, which will also take into account the potential transfer of RIDE to Ryde Town Council in effect from Q2 2021. The emergency exercise and oil spill exercise, which David referred to, unfortunately, yes, they were scheduled for the middle of November. There was a heavy involvement from the council's emergency planning team. Obviously, their attentions were diverted elsewhere with the lockdown and COVID-related activities, so it was necessary to cancel. And they are being rescheduled for early next year, as Jonathan alluded to. And in terms of the user group, we did try and have a virtual user group. Unfortunately, I think we only had one confirmed and one tentative respondent for that meeting, so we decided not to go ahead. I did issue a cancellation and ask if anyone had any questions or queries. All the papers had been issued to let me have those. I haven't actually received anything. We will try again for January to organise a further Harbour user group meeting. We did send out an information update in July, late July, early August, to all members of the Harbour user group, just to keep them abreast of what we've done in relation to COVID and business as usual in the short term. So we have maintained communication with the group, albeit we haven't actually met for a number of months now.
Okay.
Sorry.
You shoot, David.
Moving on. Sorry.
You go ahead.
Okay, beg your pardon. Moving ahead onto the navigation risk assessment. The navigation risk assessment should be reviewed about every year, 18 months. Some ports look at the higher risk things more often, and the lower risk and low ones in the ranked lists less often. A port like yours, which is not like Southampton, I think probably a quick review of it once a year is what's required. When I was with you, it hadn't been done for a while, and that now and that has been reorganized to do it now. I think the thing there that you'll see I've mentioned twice here is you'll see a little bit further down as well about the Blade Runner. When my company or William Heaps came over and did your navigation risk assessment, the Blade Runner was running up to the I've forgotten the Vectus. I've forgotten the name of the berth, the Vectus berth. But now the Blade Runner's cargo is considerably longer, and I think when it's re-examined, when you look at it again, we want to look at the Blade Runner again, operation again, to make sure we're still comfortable with it. Now you'll see further down the recommendations and in the body of it is that because you're not a piloted, because you're not a piloted authority, you aren't carrying pilotages nor issuing PECs in your area. You're not able to, and we put in an arrangement with Williams Shipping with some additional procedures to put in place for the operation of for that vessel. What I'm trying to say, what I'm not trying to say, what I'm saying here is, I think once you've done your navigation risk assessment, you want to go back to Williams Shipping and say, these are the regulations that are in place for your vessel, and make sure that they understand it and they're fully promulgated. And of course, I think then probably you can subsume them into general directions later on. But I think the point is, I think we must make quite sure that you're running quite a large vessel into an area without pilotage and put in additional measures to make sure that is a safe operation, which I think it is. But I think we must make quite sure we've dotted the I's and crossed the T's, and they know and reiterate what they are required to do. So I think stage one is just do the navigation risk assessment, which I don't. Jonathan might tell you what date that's sorted out for, but I know that. Sorry, the review. But once that's done, I think that ought to be reiterated with them. On the safety management system, it sounds pompous thing to say. The safety management has developed nicely since I was over with you. I think early last year, or it might have been early this year. It's coming along nicely. It's the latest issue is 1.3, and it's on the which was issued in the summer of this year, and that I think, considering where it started from, I think we've now got a decent decent safety marine safety management system. So I think we should all be pleased with that. We've talked about the emergency plan, but it was hopelessly out of date, and it was completely rewritten and issued in the summer of this year. So that's good too. We've talked about the pollution exercise again. We've talked about the robust campaign for shifting derelict vessels. And I think the last thing is I've sent copies to all the ports that we act as their designated person for, and some of the ones we're advisors to, and a couple where I'm on the board of. There was a spate of vessels. It's called self-mooring. It's when a fairly large vessel comes in and there's nobody there to catch its ropes ashore, so somebody jumps off the bow or the side and takes the head rope with them and goes like in a small yacht. So you can imagine if that thing is more like 4,000 tons, it's a slightly more unpleasant, more risky business. And there's about 3 people. We've had 3 or 4 fatalities in the last sort of 2 or 3 years within the industry. So there's been an edict has come out from the MCA and from the port PSS, which is the Port Safety and Security people, and basically reminding ports to do that. So this is a reminder that you make sure that that it's not happening. You are fortunate. The only vessels you've got coming in there where this really matters is for now is the Blade Runner, because I rather imagine, which would be a much more awkward one to have dealt with, would have been that little I can't remember what she was called, the little gravel carrier that you were coming in, and that getting on top of that one would be more awkward. So I think those were the main points within my report. Clearly, within the body of the report, which is a fairly long read for you all, is that there's a bit more detail about it. But I wonder, are there any questions about the report, or any comments, or you'd like to discuss anything?
Brian, go on.
One's just more bit of information. You know, you're the independent designated person for Newport Harbour, but you did mention that Ventnor and Ryde don't have one. Are they legally obliged to have one as well?
Oh, very much so. And the Port Marine Safety Code, which I know we're going to talk about training a little bit later on, but the Port Marine Safety Code, one of the sort of 5 fundamental tenets of running a port is the appointment of a duty holder, the appointment of a designated person, a safety management system, and a risk assessment system, a navigation risk assessment. Those are the 4 basic tenets. The 5th one is stakeholder consultation. So it is missing absolutely the fundamental one, nor in fact do they have I don't think that you are the duty holder for those either legally.
What do you mean we're not the duty holder?
Because if you look at your safety management system and all your policies, they only apply to Newport.
All right.
Right. Okay. So all I was just thinking ahead. So that's one thing that Ryde Harbour, if the Ryde Harbour is transferred to Ryde Town Council, that's something they'll have to pick up.
It's something they have to pick up, or share it with QHM Portsmouth. There are 2 ways around it, and they can become a berth operator within QHM Portsmouth's area.
Okay. Right. The question is, page 12 of your report. It's under
page 12. Wait a second. Let me go through.
Under risk assessment.
Hang on. 9, sorry, I'm scrolling through at the speed of light. Here I am, page 12, yes.
Right, it's under comments. It says 4.3. There are currently comparatively few risk control measures listed against each hazard. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Right. If you had general directions in force, you would have a series of regulations, and then you could say something like one of the causes of speeding. You could then have your general direction number 1, which is the speed limit is. You don't have any of that at present. You don't have a speed limit, but unless rather obscure bylaw about, is it 4 Trees Point? So, and that is listed. So the point is, you don't have many control measures at present because you don't have the powers to make them, because you haven't got your harbour revision order.
Oh, so once the harbour revision order comes in, then we'll have the powers in some form.
Yes, you then have to make things called general directions, and then you can refer to those general directions, and amongst other things, you would apply them as risk control measures against the appropriate hazard.
Okay, and does that then mean we have to, what's the word, monitor it or enforce it in some way or other? And do we have a person to do that?
Most ports are one step ahead of you, and they've already got many ports have got are ahead of you, or got much more thorough bylaws to do it. So that is the common way of it. Is basically you just literally look at your regulations and you look at your hazards, and the regulations, most of the regulations are there to minimize the effect of the hazards. So those as the control measures. So all it is a matter of just associating one against the other. It's a few hours job, but the writing of the appropriate and proportional general directions is the thing that we've got to get through next. And of course, when we do write general directions, they then have to go out to public consultation.
Oh, God.
Did I hear a great wall of enthusiasm?
Yeah. So it's something we've got to do, and obviously it's a cost involved as well in some form.
I don't know how much of a cost it's going to be honest with you. Drafting them, I know that Jonathan has drafted some. I sort of whispered caution in his ears, but I think not to make them too difficult to authenticate, but things like and what you plagiarize, what you write yourself. But I think the first thing to do is to sit down with a blank sheet of paper and say, what is it I need to regulate that I can't regulate at present? And then writing your general directions about that, clearly with definitions at the front and things like that. But again, I've offered to give a hand with that when the MMO finally cough up.
Okay, well that's fine. As long as it's free, we'll quite happily take it. Fine. Okay.
Okay. Anyone got anything
That's
else?
the end of my little lot.
Okay. Anyone got anything else for David? No. Okay, David, thank you very much for that.
A pleasure.
Yeah.
I just wanted to convey my thanks. Sorry, Chair. Yes, thank you very much for that comprehensive report. Really helpful. Thank you.
Good.
Okay.
I'm glad it hit the spot.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. The next item is let's have a look at it. The Port Marine Safety Code, and I have that in front of me, and effectively it's a statement signed off by me. So if anyone's got any problems with me signing it off, speak now or forever hold your peace.
I could say something.
Go on.
Yeah. Oh no, I think it sort of repeated what I said before. Was one of the sentences with regard to riding Ventnor Harbours, issues identified in the last health check are still being addressed, so they remain non-compliant.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just aware of that because of the potential sale of one or either of those to some willing people. Okay. That's fine. No, I'm happy. No signature. That's it. Right.
Okay.
I think it's most important that we actually say where we are with them, rather than sort of say a great big blanket, yet we're all right. And I think that the draft that Sean's done here is absolutely spot on, and saying that we're making the point about harbour revision orders and things, because they were all parts of their previous comments. So I think this letter is better than just a blanket saying we comply.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that's absolutely right, Dave. Because you know, really, I think back to I've been a councillor for 12 years almost, and it wasn't anything going on at all like this. Not the committee, you know, the duty holder. I think it was the cabinet, you know, and there's obviously the local action group, you know, worked hard to bring this to the council's attention. So yes, it's been a long journey, and we've still got a way to go. But what great strides we've made. So thank you, everybody.
Okay. We'll move on to the next item now, which is the Newport Harbour Masterplan, which I believe Chris Ashman was going to lead on. But is Chris here?
No.
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 Okay. Ali, are you able to pick that up?
Sean's got a couple of points that Chris has given him, but we may want to defer it. I'll take a view from Sean.
Yeah, I was just going to say, thanks, Alex. And Ian, I was just going to say, Chris unfortunately is double booked now. He's got one public estate meeting.
Yeah.
And I would suggest, because I think what we wanted Chris to do was to run through the agreed harbour regeneration plan and highlight the differences between the draft and the signed off copy. And I would propose, as Alex suggested, we defer that to the next meeting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sean. I think we do all want to see what the final product is, as it were, and go for it. Shirley, you
yes, that was my comments entirely. But before I carry on, I apologise for being late. I didn't I, obviously the method of getting in has changed, which I wasn't aware of, and by accident I managed to get in, so thank you. Yes, all I was going to say is I don't know whether this is the second meeting or it could even be our third meeting that this item has been deferred and deferred and deferred. One might get the feeling that why is it being deferred? And yes, because it will be another 3 months now, won't it?
Okay. Well, I wonder. I mean, I will speak to the director and see if if we could have just a special meeting for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It may not be able to, but we can only ask, can't we?
We can only ask. Yes.
Yeah. Everyone happy with that? We give that a whirl. Yeah.
I think you'd be more than happy to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Right, it's now members' questions, if you've got any left.
I'm thinking. Let me have a think. You know.
Shirley, go on.
Sorry, it's not a question for this, but Alex, could you talk to me before you go? I've got something urgent I want to talk to you about. Thank you.
Okay. Right, members, if we have nothing else, we say, oh, Julie, go on.
Yeah, no, apologies, I didn't actually write the question in because it's sort of been creating in my mind during the meeting. Getting back to the harbour wall really, and the piece of highway between the wall and the bargeman's rest, you know, and it flooding. And I think there's a sort of a question that we need to look at the safety of this area, and also given, you know, that Chair, that you were looking at, there was proposals for making that a cycle through route, wasn't there? There's a big piece of work here that we need to look at really, and I was just wondering if it was a piece of work that the committee could look at, or where was his best place. I know it's you know, I know we've had to remove berths, haven't we, from that wall, I understand as well. So I'm just thinking, obviously that's a loss of income potentially if we haven't got berths there. But yeah, it's just I'm just trying to work out what is the best way forward for that area. And then obviously, it's, you know, I've not got the expertise to do this. We've got officers and professionals that know better. But just, you know, so it's part of my wall that throws up issues. We've got businesses down there as well. But you know, there's a potential for a higher standard of walking and cycling infrastructure through there as well. I'm just wondering what could be done. I guess big question perhaps. But not for now, but that's my question.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's certainly something that Alex, Mids and Sean are working on, the cycling bit, and that was the subject, as you know, in the lockdown, was to do something with that area. I'm just trying to think of the right venue for that, really. Is it a cycling walking issue, or is it a harbour issue? It's a bit of both, isn't it? And we're best to cover that off, really.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, Sean, Jonathan, we've taken berths away from that wall, haven't we? Am I right, or am I is that old news?
No, you're quite right, Julie. We took those berths away. One of David's previous audits highlighted that we should have risk assessments for those berths because they abut part of the highway network, and you've got the potential for people getting off their boats onto a highway. And we undertook that risk assessment, and that was the reason for removing those berths, because it was felt unsafe that someone could walk into the path of a car or a motorbike or a small HGV. It wasn't necessarily to do with the condition of the wall. As you know, that all the walls in the harbour have been surveyed. Island Roads do intend to resurface that section of road, but they want us to undertake remedial works to the wall before they do that, in case that highlights any issues. That there is no funding available for that at the moment, so that resurfacing work and wall repair work is in abeyance. Having said that, the latest survey says that we don't actually need to do it in the short term. It's more a medium to long term and it's more cosmetic. So there's no urgency attached to those wall repairs, which doesn't help the resurfacing of the road, I'm afraid.
No, of course,
might be worth giving a little bit of an update on that as the cycle path, as Julie said, because it was one of the things that was looked at by Active Travel and Active Travel 1. And Ian will remember this. The original suggestion that was put forward by certainly the cycling fraternity was to make that road a one-way road, so that well, actually to close the road off at the far end. Which from an aspirational, from a cycling point of view, seemed a reasonably sensible thing to do, but we did hit problems with regards to access of things like waste vehicles, delivery vehicles, and not enough turning space. So the suggestion then was, the highways colleagues said that we would consider putting a kind of moratorium in that road, so that we didn't allow access to cars other than if they were going to a business, which would have been something like the Bargeman's Rest, or that they were a delivery vehicle. We've since been out and spoken to the owners of the bargemans to see how they feel about that, because initially I think they'd been given some false information. They're not objecting to that, as long as it's managed in the right way, and it would be an experimental traffic order. The only thing that we were waiting for was to get the result of Active Travel 2, which we've just got, and then to come and meet with Newport Town Council, not Town Council anymore, is it, but the Community Partnership, and to meet with them to talk through what their views were on it before we implemented it, if that's what they want us to do. So there is a view that that still might be the case. I think in the long term, in terms of cycling, I think one of the suggestions.
We've lost you,
to the other side, and I think.
Alec, you're breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
Can now, yeah.
Yeah. One of the suggestions was, I think, in the Newport plans, was to have a bridge that runs over the top of the harbour, that would also act as a cycling bridge. So it may well be that because that is not ideal as a cycle path, that tiny narrow road. It would be better if it was on the other side. So there is a possibility that might be something for the future. I don't know if that helps to answer your question, Julie.
That's really helpful, Alex. Yeah, and yeah, I'll be happy obviously to talk through that as chair of the community council, as you said that, and obviously local member too. So if you say, if you sort of thinking again, if you say it's not ideal for a cycle route, how is it ideal for a through vehicle route? You know, that really is not fit for purpose. I don't believe as a through route, given the narrowness, proximity to the harbour itself, and now we've actually lost some berthing. So from the harbour's perspective, not great, and also not great at the moment for visitors who, they can go to the Folly and get a drink and moor up, but they can't get near the bargemans as they used to. So I think it sort of detracts from the ambience as well. Having those boats close up to that wall was always a great part of a great feature coming through. So I think, it's something I think we need to look at the long term viability of that, really. But thank you, appreciate that. Thank you, Ian, for letting me ask that question.
That's okay. Right. If nobody has anything else, I'll close the meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. David, thank you so much for joining us, and basically doing the hard work to do it. So thank you very much for coming, and all of you. Goodbye now.
Thank you.